Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Airspeed's Avatar Rewatch video. This one's going to be for Book 2 Earth Episode 6, The Blind Bandit. This one is animated by JM Animation. And yeah, it's absolutely fair to say this is one of the better episodes in the show overall. Some people, I know, rate this episode really, really highly, like right up there within their like top 5 or maybe even higher than that as like one their absolute favorite episode. For me, it's up there, but not quite that high. And I think part of it is because of, I suppose, how they use or in a way don't use Toph as a character over the course of her run in the show. Of course, everyone in the fandom knows she is a super, super popular character and a hugely successful addition to the cast, and I think she's an awesome character. The problem is just that she's also probably the least like deep character in terms of like she has the least amount of like plot related to her, in that where we go from here is basically that, okay, she's a part of the team now. There's a little bit of growing pains as she adapts to being part of the team. There's the metal bending reveal, and that's kind of about it. This episode, I felt like it set up the whole idea of the big issue with her parents. And it's always one of those things with the show where I felt they should have attempted to touch on that a little bit more. And obviously it's taken until the Rift for it to be addressed. And even to this day, the stuff with the mother still isn't kind of properly in play yet. But they have addressed most of the stuff between Toph and her father. So I think that's a thing that kind of is all over this episode in the sense of, this is like Toph's most character focused episode in a way, but it's because it focuses on stuff that really is only touched upon here. That being her relationship with her parents and the way they treat her. In general, a lot of that stuff is kind of left behind here in this initial introductory episode. That being the whole idea of like the idea of like her hiding her power and life as a member of Earth Rumble from her parents, primarily because her parents are hiding her from everyone else, because there's this constant thing in this episode of them feeling somewhat ashamed to have a daughter with a disability, and so they don't let any of the other noble families or anyone really know that they have a daughter. And they obviously care about Toph, but it's kind of like, we care about you, but, and it always has that but, not so much that we're going to like really make it well known that we have a daughter. And it's a very interesting dynamic, to the point where like I would have loved to see, like by the end of the show, like why couldn't we just have Lau and Poppy be at like the celebration at the end and just kind of do something there. I get it if like there was always the idea to have it be a bigger plot along the lines of the comics, but I don't think come the end of the show the comics were immediately planned. Maybe Mike and Brian always had the idea of where they would ultimately go with that arc, but where were they going to do it? So it kind of has always been like within the just arc of the show. It should have been touched on a little bit more, because they do have her send a letter back to them eventually, but that's right towards the end and it's never resolved really. So there's that throughout the episode. But she's a cool character because they use the fact that she's blind. She's one of the smaller characters in terms of being a bender that we've met. There's the huge size discrepancy between her and the boulder when they have their big kind of showdown is incredible. And it's just this really unique dynamic of her being so small, being so powerful as an earthbender. Kind of just even that, the fact that she's an earthbender, that's the power that she has. You could maybe understand like one of the more powerful airbenders being quite small, because Aang's really powerful, even though he's not like massively big. Even firebending, you get that, but I think with waterbenders you almost like, with earthbenders you almost like assume like they have to be somewhat like big and muscly, but it's just she uses a different style as well to get that across, that she doesn't rely a lot on the muscles, and it's a very unique style that she has using the earth. And it is one of the best moments in this episode when she and Aang finally, after their initial arguing, have that talk, and she kind of explains basically how it works, that she sees through earthbending. She senses the vibrations because she's an earthbender. She can sense it so clearly, and basically sees with her feet, and it allows her to see more than a lot of people do because it's so sensitive, and that gives her this amazing connection to Earth, and because of that she is kind of in a way more powerful than a lot of like fully able-bodied characters who maybe should be able to do other stuff if they connected as much as she did. Because I like, even within this episode, that they're not afraid, even when they introduce such a powerful character, to also kind of highlight her weakness as well. They make a joke about it at the end, and then they have her lose to obviously Aang in the match, that up against an airbender who really is careful about how much weight they're placing on the ground when they move around, she's kind of very defensive. She has to very much like wait and react for them to hit the ground, but because Aang is so agile, she can't really touch him for the most part. And I like that they weren't afraid to, after introducing her so strongly, immediately kind of have her take a loss. And even at the end, just the idea of like Sokka throwing the belt to her, and her not being aware that it has been thrown to her because there was no notification of it, and she hasn't learned earthbending just yet, and it just being like, oh, that's a slight weakness that she has. And of course, as the series progresses, you see that without them drawing too much attention to it, she kind of tightens up a lot of the little weaknesses that she has. She becomes a bit better at kind of dealing with stuff that's coming through the air at her, and that sort of thing. But really, really interesting use of her power. Just how they use the fight scenes to showcase this. Of the boulder gets all these amazing wins in the Earth Rumble, and he looks like an amazing, powerful bender, and then Toph just comes in and owns him completely. Is really, really amazing. And then especially the fight at the end where they all come at her and she just one by one picks them off, is in very little danger in that fight. And you have someone like a Master Yu, who himself is a Master Earthbender, kind of saying like, she is absolutely the most powerful Earthbender I've ever seen, and getting across that it isn't just that she's good, she's exceptional. And I think that worked really well for introduction. Because at the start, obviously, the whole idea in this episode is that they're still looking for an earthbending teacher for Aang, and they initially think, oh, free earthbending lesson for Master Yu, that has to be it. But he ultimately is more focused on money. He kind of has like the standard kind of karate lesson style of thing, where like, oh, belts and colors and stuff like that. It's not what Aang needs, really. He needs someone more kind of personal, focused. And they go to Earth Rumble. Fun little scene of like the boys not telling Aang and kind of insulting him, but then Katara obviously getting her way with them and getting the information out of them. And then Earth Rumble itself is really, really fun. I think that this is one of the things that makes this episode so unique and interesting, in that they just have so much fun playing around with Earth Rumble that it effectively is an earthbending wrestling promotion. And they're just really obvious about a lot of the references, but it's you get what it is, but if you know about wrestling and get what they're going for here, there's even more to it. In that, like, obviously the boulder is effectively like an Avatar World parody of The Rock, and the initial plan was to get The Rock to voice him, but they couldn't make it work, so they got Mick Foley instead, who obviously was a former tag team partner of The Rock and himself a very well known wrestler. So that was pretty awesome. And then like you see all the little kind of things, like just with all the gimmicks that all of the other Earth Rumble competitors have, of just like, oh, there's a guy wearing like a kind of luchador mask. There's Fire Nation Man is a good example of just like there's someone who is like completely being a heel, a bad guy in wrestling. And it has this other layer of like, if it is meant to be just full on like wrestling, that it isn't just a case of like this is proper fights, that it's not in any way planned out. That's one way to interpret it, but also there's a sense of that because they all ultimately gang up together to go after Toph the Blind Bandit for swindling them out of the money, there's the implication that this is a kind of shady organization that is kind of pretending to be like real competition when they actually have it all planned out from the start, that it is a wrestling thing where it's scripted. You know, they use real earthbending and they hit each other, but they know what's going to happen here. So that kind of in a way has to be the case. Hence why you would have like a Fire Nation man who is so over the top as like I like the Fire Nation in the Earth Kingdom as like a bad guy gimmick, and then of course he's the one who loses immediately in his fight. But there's also a sense of like, is it that? Because then Toph feels like she's not necessarily completely involved in that why would the Boulder want to take such a loss like he did? But at the same time, it's like, you know, maybe Toph makes them a lot of money and they're okay. The Boulder's okay with being presented really strongly and then losing that match at the end to the Blind Bandit to surprise everyone, and then set up the whole idea of like, you know, we'll get more people in if we kind of think that they can beat the Blind Bandit with the money. So it's this kind of constant thing of just like, is it meant to be a proper competition, or is it all planned out by like Zinfu, like you're gonna lose tonight, you're gonna win, and this is how it's all gonna play out. But yeah, there's definitely some unique styles we see throughout here. I think again, Fire Nation Man is interesting because he has like a minor backstory of actually like coming from the Siwang Desert, and you see some of his style involves like primarily like dirt bending here, but you know, the idea that he knows sand bending effectively, but he uses basically crushed up rock as, you know, a replacement for sand here, and that's his style, and that's just a really unique thing where like, you know, before we're properly introduced to the idea that there are like full-on sandbenders specialization, here's someone who more or less is that, but is kind of living in a more kind of away from the desert now. So that's pretty cool to see. Another great thing with the Earth Rumble is the Badger Mole Zambonis who clean up the arena after they do all the earthbending. That's really cool to see that, you know, kind of like Aang has Appa as like a pet, and like they're really friendly, that it can be that way with badger moles, that they're not just these wild animals you find in tunnels, that you can actually, you know, to some degree, you know, domesticate them and get them to do what you want if you're nice to them. And this is a cool use of it. It's one of those things that, like, yeah, the badger moles are probably like the most like blatantly clear animal in terms of that they are like literally bending, because they can so cleanly like smooth out earth and like bend it. It's really cool to see. Another thing, the Boulder, his tattoo, the tattoo on his back, I actually really only noticed it actually in my rewatch here. It's, if you look at the tattoo, it actually is in the shape of a badger mole. And then the initial idea I had was just like, wait, is there some sort of connection here in that like quite muscly guy tattoo? Gazan's another muscly guy, also has a tattoo, Earth Kingdom. Is there any connection here in terms of maybe like where these two characters are from, some sort of a tattoo connection? They're very different, but you know, it's something interesting to note. But just that like the Boulder has a badger mole tattoo on his back, and especially with the fact that he comes back later on with some of the others and actually like fight for the Earth Kingdom, and that like, yes, they're more familiar with this kind of wrestling style of earthbending, but that they are warriors when it comes down to it, and they care about their nation was really cool to see. And I think as well, like seeing her like greet them again in that episode, and like actually like get the idea that she's actually, you know, part of this group, this kind of you know, Earth Rumble group. And even though there was this kind of confusion about the money and her them thinking she's joined up with the Avatar to take the money, they still are, you know, on friendly terms for the most part. What else do we have here? That covers like the majority of it, I think. But yeah, I suppose like right at the end, the idea that she shows to her father, her parents, basically for the first time, that she is powerful. She doesn't need to be looked after, protected in the way that they have been doing for so long. There's no need whatsoever to hide her, because she's more capable than almost anyone. She objectively is, you know, one of the best earthbenders in the world. Like, everyone says it, it's her or Boomy, and if she comes second to Boomy, that is no problem whatsoever, because Boomy is, you know, so, you know, experienced and powerful himself, having a unique style because of his kind of approach to things with the jings and so on. Like, that's no issue. And then if you say she's number one, what's the problem? Why would you want to hide and keep the best earthbender in the world from doing anything? So it's one of those ones where, like, I really like that dynamic with Toph and her parents, and that it's an interesting how they approach doing it. It's just that it took until the comics for them to finally realize that that's, like, the core of her arc, really. Because I like what she kind of says to them at the end, that, like, she's 12 years old and she's never had a real friend, and their approach to finding out that she's this powerful is like, we need to give you less freedom, we need to protect you even more, because we didn't know that you were doing this in the background. And so she just runs away, that she knows that this opportunity with Aang is something she can't let slip by, that even though they tried to convince her earlier on in the episode that, like, we need you, you need to teach the Avatar earthbending and, like, play your part in the war. I think even though she doesn't directly say it, there's part of her that, yes, it's about the freedom and friends for the first time, but that a little bit of destiny for her, and that, like, at this specific time people found her and needed her, this was her kind of, that she had to run away and escape from this and join Aang and help as much as she did. And it's very well done in the Rift comic when they get to it. Of course, I think there's a little bit more to go with, like, Toph and her mother and fully fixing that family dynamic, but Toph and her father was very well executed in the comic. What else have we got here? I think that's it for the most part. The main dynamics are, of course, just they come in, Annie's an earthbending teacher, the Earth Rumble stuff is really funny, it's good action, and it's just well written and clever. And then the more serious stuff towards the end with Toph is, again, really well done. They do set up right at the end that because she's run away, they think that, like, Team Avatar have kidnapped her, so they send Master Yu and Xinfu after them as kind of, like, bounty hunters here. So yeah, we don't get much on those characters, and they're ultimately left in the metal box, but just to add a little plot that, her parents didn't just accept that she ran away, that they actually did do something to try and get her back. It made complete sense, and the people that they chose, I suppose, also made sense, that, like, you have the leader of the organization she was a part of, and then Master Yu, who seems to be, like, the family earthbending teacher in a way. And yeah, like, even just that, like, I suppose Master Yu, the fact that he is her teacher, I thought that was a really, it's one of the things you almost forget, that just, like, I'd actually like just to, a really quick little thing, just to see how she acts, like, how she acts during, like, a full training session with him. Like, we get to see a little bit, like, here and there about what it is, but just to see, like, he obviously said it's focused on, like, the basics and, like, breathing exercises, but, like, does that mean that they just don't do any earthbending full stop? Like, I'd love to see if she ever just decided to kind of mess with him for a while, that, like, if they did do some sort of earthbending and, like, her parents were aware that she can at least move earth, that she does some little things to kind of surprise him. It'd be a fun little dynamic, but they're two characters, I think, that just in general, the Earth Rumble characters, that, like, will we ever see them again? I'm not sure. I'd like to see more Earth Rumble stuff, maybe get more about the organization, but just for this episode, it was really, really well done. So yeah, that's the most of the episode. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Blind Bandit. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.